What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to be looking at the Machadocado by Firewire. A special thanks to Palo, who let me borrow his brand new 5.2 Machadocado. I think he only surfed it a couple times, but told me I can hold on to it as long as I needed to get this review done. But unfortunately, the waves, as you can tell, are really small. So this is part one of two. So the first review is going to be about the board and the conditions that I surfed it in. And hopefully I'll get an opportunity to surf it in better ways, so I'll get a fuller review. The size that I'm riding is 5.2 by 19 15/16 by 2 1/4 and comes in at 26.8 liters. Now what's really interesting is if you go to the website and look at their stock dimensions, this board doesn't exist in their lineup. And another interesting point about this board is that the logo actually says Chadocado, whereas I've seen Machadocado on pretty much all the other boards. And for some reason I have a memory of seeing one that just said Cado, but I can't seem to find that image. So according to Firewire, the Chadocado is a low entry rocker and a low exit rocker. So here I wanted to compare the mashup rocker to the Cado. This last image here is going to be with 3 different boards, the Cado, the Seaside, and the Two Fish. And the biggest surprise for me was the Two Fish, which has a lot more rocker than I initially thought. So now moving on to the contour. The board is a single about halfway through, and then from the midway it turns into a double, and then that gets deeper past the fins, and then from what I could tell, it's pretty much flat out the tail, maybe slight belly on it. So this board comes in their helium technology, which is a very light but durable construction. The cool thing is they do have 2 different designs, one in the traditional helium, and then this new swirl. I don't know what they call it, but I will say that I feel like this version, the swirled version, is a little bit heavier than the original construction. So getting on with how this board surfed. Overall, I found this board to be super responsive and controllable. I should mention that I am surfing this with Rob's 2+1, the new fins that he made for this board, and they're fantastic. The fins and board work very well together. Initially, I thought the board felt a little sluggish, but when I look at the footage, I don't see any of that. I actually like the way it looks in the video. I think even though those waves are very small and very gutless, I seem to be doing really well, and I was having a lot of fun. Now for the sake of comparing, I decided to try a different set of fins. Here I'm looking at the Orcas, and as you can see, they're really big. Now my impatient self forgot to remove or change out the stabilizer fin. I used Rob's stabilizer fin, which is a larger fin. So the combination of the Orcas, big side fins, and Rob's stabilizer, big rear fin, it was just way too much fin for the board. I found this setup to be very slow and dragged tremendously. But it did have a lot of drive when I put it on rail and I pushed against the fin. I think here the Orcas would have worked great without a stabilizer, which I'll try next time. So after this wave, I decided to go in and actually just swap out the Orcas with the Taylor Knox to see, how much of a difference that would make. And based on the footage, the Taylor Knox went much better. Here I just wanted to show you what it actually did with the Orcas. There was so much drag that it just was really hard to push the nose down. And it put me behind on the pop-up, so it was really hard to get my momentum going. Now here are some locals giving me the side eye. I also accidentally dropped in on a local, but luckily he was cool. So definite thumbs up for the Machado 2+1s as well as the Taylor Knox. Although I think with the Knox I could have probably used his trailer. And the reason I'm showing you different fins is because not everyone is going to go out and buy the entire combo. Board and fins, that is. If you already have twin fins and a lot of them, you might want to save yourself the money. Just ride something similar to the one that Machado designed, okay? Which is just smaller twin fin side front fins with a larger back fin. So it almost has a thruster feel. Now I would put this board in the category of groveler. Okay, so if you watch this channel, you know that I classify things as uber grovelers or grovelers. And the groveler is more like a seaside. Performance groveler would be a mashup. And then the sweet potato 2 is like an uber groveler. This board is probably closest to the seaside in terms of volume, width, that sort of stuff. But by design, they serve totally different. And by different, it's more of a feeling, and it's really hard to describe that. Just generally speaking, I will say that the seaside is a much more user-friendly board. The Chadocado tends to need a little bit more finesse. You probably want to surf the tail really far back. So, if you don't have the wherewithal to have good foot placement, then the seaside is definitely a better option. So if you didn't notice, I switched to the NVS Krakens. Now these fins have a slightly wider tip and a slightly wider base, but generally the same shape as the Machado twins. So I found these to work the best of the set, all the fins I tried. One other thing I want to mention about the pop-up issue that I was having is that the tail is very foiled out. It's super thin. But even more so that you don't visibly see is the fact that he put such deep concaves in it that the back half of the board, from the middle back, there's a lot of foam missing underneath. So it's actually thinner at the center than it is, at the rails. And what I found is that because, a good portion of my legs, maybe shin down, knee down maybe, was hanging off the back, it made it really difficult to get the tail lift for paddling and catching the wave for the pop-up. Having said that, for those of you who plan to ride this a little bit bigger, that shouldn't be an issue. So now I'm back on the Machado 2+1s, and one thing I do want to mention is that although in the beginning you saw me surfing a lot of smaller waves, this board shines as it gets about waist high and up. So anything smaller, if you have an uber groveler, that's probably a better option. The seaside actually grovels a tad bit better, I think, in the smaller stuff because of the looseness in the fins and your ability to try to get the traction quicker. But this board, once the waves were a little bit more, I guess, not hollow, but upright and about waist high or greater, the board was pretty magic. Now something else that happened was that on my air attempts, it kept the board flat, which normally I tend to lean too much. And this next wave coming up is one of my favorite waves on this board, which took the board from, in my opinion, I thought it was a good board to, again, above waist high, it becomes magical. And this maneuver is probably one of the better ones I've done in a very long time. I had so much speed on this maneuver, and through the maneuver, I felt like I was gaining speed. Now what's really weird is, I know I'm slowing it down here, but when it happened, it was so quick, and it just like projected me out into the flats. So if it didn't happen that quickly, I don't think I would have pulled it. So just to recap, the board is just a good board, I think, anything under 2 foot. As it gets above 2 foot, it becomes amazing. It's a great board. I get a lot of questions regarding comparisons. And a lot of people asked about this compared to the Sweet Potato 2, which they are completely different category of boards. Now, mind you, both, if you got both in the 5.2, this one would be, the Chadocado would be 25.9, and the Sweet Potato 2, I think, is closer to 32 liters, 31, 32 liters. So that difference puts them in a totally different category of boards. So you shouldn't compare those two. One's an Uber Groveler, which is excellent under 2 foot, right? This one is just good under 2 foot, but above 2 foot, this is where the Chadocado becomes excellent. Now the last thing I want to leave you with is kind of a illustration of the fin placement on the Chadocado. Now for those of you who don't know, the fins on a standard quad and thruster, the front fins are set further up. On a 2+1 design board, the front fins are set a little bit further back, and then on a true twin, they're actually way back. anyways, before this video gets way too long, I just wanted to thank you guys for watching. And please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. There's a thanks button for anyone who wants to support the channel. And until the next one.